Greetings, salutations, and welcome to Sportslook, the sports television program for the high plains of West Texas and eastern New Mexico. I'm your host, Doc Elder, and since spring officially arrived last week, this week we're going with an all-spring episode. We've got Albert Flinn from Greyhound Rodeo. We've got Deven Nelson, the assistant baseball coach. We've got a high school spotlight focusing on baseball, courtesy of Brandon and Ryan. But as always, I'll start out with an Eastern recap. Greyhound softball did lose all 3 games last weekend, but they lost to the number 11 team in the nation, so no disgrace there. Really good Saturday for Greyhound track and field. A number of personal bests were established in their dual meet against the University of the Southwest, and a big day tomorrow for Greyhound football. They're playing their annual spring sports scrimmage. Well, that has been your Eastern recap, so we'll clear the set and we'll bring in our first coach, Albert Flinn from Greyhound Rodeo, right now. Welcome back to Sportslook, and we bring to the set the coach of Eastern New Mexico University Rodeo, Albert Flinn. And Coach, welcome back to Sportslook.
Thank you much.
One thing has certainly changed since the last time we had you on. Fall grades came out, and very proud of your rodeo squads.
Yes, our 21 women had a GPA of 3.5, and the men had a GPA of 3.14. So, yeah, we didn't have a real good fall rodeo season, but it showed up in the classroom, and that's pretty much what we're geared up to, is kids getting the education.
And one of the things, Coach, that's unusual about rodeo, shared only by basketball, is that you've got competition in the fall semester, you've got competition in the spring semester, so your students can't just like take an easy load one semester and then do a hard one. You've got to be performing the classroom both semesters.
Both semesters, yeah. It's 5 rodeos in the fall and 5 in the spring, and the fall is really difficult because they go to 4 in a row, and then they have a week, and then they go to another one. So they're out of class quite a bit, and because they leave on Thursdays and they spend the weekend. So, but the spring isn't quite as bad. They go early February and then middle of the 21st of February, 21st of March, and we're fixing to go. We went last week, and we'll go next week, and then we'll end up about the 1st of April.
Coach, I had the privilege of having one of the most outstanding rodeo performers ever, a young lady named Hayden Segelke, who was one of my advisees. Is there one major in particular that a lot of your rodeo athletes gravitate towards?
No, I don't think so necessarily. I've got a young lady that's going to graduate summa cum laude, and she's a pre-med student, and she's a Canadian, and her plans are to go home and set out the year so she can get into medical school and become a doctor and be there at home. And bright young lady, and so they're a mix from there to communications to business and then education.
I'm curious, and I've never asked you this question. We get a fair share of Canadians down here to Eastern New Mexico University. What's the connection?
I really, other than the warmth, they get to leave home and somewhere where it's warm. And we had early on, we had some Canadians come, and then they brought their friends. And right now I have 5 Canadian girls, and next fall I'll have a Canadian boy. And so, but it has more to do with the region that we're in and the weather.
How early do you start to take notice? When do you start to get a young person on your radar in terms of possibly recruiting that person?
Well, I'm talking to juniors in high school right now, and some that's going to actually be a senior next fall, and so if we find a sophomore girl that we really want to tag on to, we'll start looking at her then. But mostly the ones that I really wanted this spring, they were just juniors this year, so I won't get them this fall. I have to wait another year before I'll get a chance to get them. But we've had quite a few interest. We've got 2 girls coming from Montana in the fall, I had a couple 2 days ago come from western part of Wyoming next to the Idaho border, and so they're coming south, basically get out of the winter.
And I would imagine that the weather is definitely an asset when it comes to recruiting, but also Lewis Cooper Arena is a pretty nice facility to recruit to.
Yeah, and we've spent 11 years trying to upgrade it and do something every year. And of course, last summer we was fortunate enough to get the bleachers from the old football stadium and bring them to town and put them up. And we have a 50-foot section left to put up, and it's a lot easier to watch the rodeo and has a platform. They get to look over the fence instead of through the fence, and it made a real attractive facility with those bleachers added to it.
Of course, you and your predecessors as coaches have done the lion's share of making the program what it is, but there have been people that have helped you in the last 11 years. Who would you like to give a shout out to in terms of having helped you?
Well, Charles Bennett has helped me from the day one, and he's been there just about every time we had a project, and then he put together the Catch the Vision group, and it's a ministry group that takes care of the concession stand. They help me a lot during the rodeo itself, and then the physical plant does a great job of helping me rodeo week and things that need to be repaired and stuff. So between that two group, that's pretty much where we really get a lot of support.
Coach, you talked about the fact that maybe in the fall wasn't quite the performance that you had hoped for, but what is the expression? Hope springs eternal. So what are you looking for this spring from your rodeo squad?
Well, I have a steer wrestler boy from Alabama that I'd really like to get him qualified to go to nationals. He bulldogs good enough to where if he gets to nationals, he'll have a chance to win it. Right now he's struggling with what he's drawing and hasn't drawn where he could place, but has 3 rodeos to get that accomplished. And recently, the last 2 rodeos we've been to, I've had 6 girls make it to the short round in Odessa, and had 4 girls make it to the short round here at Sweetwater, and there's 131, 36 breakaway ropers, and at Odessa we had 4 girls back in the breakaway roping, and then this weekend the breakaway roping was really, really tough. They were 1-6 and 1-8, and a 2-3 was what the cut was to make it back. And I had a girl that was 2-1, and then she was 2-8 in the short round and didn't place in the average. She had to be real 2-1 and 2-2 to get a check, and then I had a couple of goat tires make it back. And I've got a young girl from Canada that has a really nice barrel horse, and we've put her on the team. And as a freshman, this was her first rodeo to make the short round, and she's getting her confidence back. Her horse is running, and we'll probably leave her on the team the rest of the year and see how we get along.
Coach, in terms of rodeo, how much of success is due to physical attributes, and how much of it is mental?
Well, a large percentage of it is mental. Horsepower is the next thing. If they have the kind of horses that'll run across the line, or they can rope, and one that'll run down the arena that stays straight, they can get off into goat tying. But it's a lot of it's mental. You know, if some of them young girls have fallen trying to tie goats, well, they kind of back off and don't run quite as hard as they once did when they never fell, and it's self-preservation. But it's, you know, to run down there and be 6'8" or 7'1" in the goat tying, they have to run their horses and get off and be smooth. And the breakaway roping, them girls' horses, they have to score and run across that line. They have to reach and rope a calf and be quick. But the barrel racing, it's one of its own. I think one year there was 150 barrel racers every weekend, and 33 barrel racers is all that actually had a point at the end of the year. And it's a very tough event in this region.
In terms of a day-to-day practice, how much of the time do you spend on technique, and how much is it giving them advice?
Well, most of it is for them to come and rope and consistently. You know, they struggle from day to day in the practice pen catching cattle like they need to. And some of it has to do with the way they ride their horse, and so we try to let them know that they need to change, and some of it has to do with the size of loop that they rope with, and they just got through having a big breakaway roping at the American, and it paid $100,000 to the girl to win it, and all of them had a big loop and a long spoke, and I tried to get them girls, if they watched it on television, did they actually see the kind of loop that them girls was roping with, and they need to imitate that.
Well, Coach, great success during your tenure here. We've had teams that have placed nationally. We've had individual champs, and let's hope that 2019 is a year when we get a little bit of both.
I hope so.
Well, that is going to wrap up our first interview segment. So what we'll do is we'll clear the set and we'll cue up a high school spotlight courtesy of Brandon and Ryan right now.
Welcome back to High School Spotlight. I'm Ryan Schroeder.
And I'm Brandon Warren. And now that basketball season's over, we're moving on to baseball.
Last week we traveled over to Dexter to catch the first matchup of the Halbogle tournament between Tularosa and NMMI.
Let's get to those highlights.
In our first play, we got Alejandro Berenas up to bat for the Colts. He'll take a good hack at it, and he'll pop it up to right center and bring a runner in from third. The outfielder for the Wildcats can't get it, and Berenas will reach first safely.
We got a runner on first base. Pitch coming in, but it's mishandled, and Barenas takes off, showing his speed, and steals second.
Andres Blyzefer up for NMMI. It's a hard ground ball towards the shortstop. He'll go for the force at first, but he doesn't get the throw there in time, and NMMI decides to hold the runner at third.
Pitcher on the mound, batter getting set in the box. He winds up to throw. It's a high pitch, but number 6 makes contact, keeps it in play, and makes it to first. Contemplates heading to second, but goes against it.
Right here, the Colts pitcher is going to fire it in, and we're going to see a steal attempt from Tularosa. But the catcher, Martin Aon, sees him and guns him down at second. Great throw there from the junior.
With 2 strikes already, Jake Leibel winds up, throws it right down the middle, and gets the strikeout.
Rylan Maloney at bat for the Colts. She makes good contact, sending it towards right field. No one's there for it, and she'll come in safely to first and bring in a runner.
With runners on first and second, Martin Aon in the box. Hits it past the shortstop. Gunnar Schwab rounds third and heads home, making it all the way. We now got 1 on first and 1 on second.
The Colts pitcher, Jake Leibel, with the bunt attempt. He'll lay it down right in front of him and take off towards first. Everyone's going for the ball, but no one's covering, so he'll make it there safe.
Stepping up to the plate is Luke Taylor. He gets a piece, sends it between third and second, gets the RBI, but is out at first.
Wildcats at bat here. The batter gets a nice swing at it, sending it deep into center, just too high for the outfielder to grab. They'll send him to second, and the cutoff man can't quite get it there, so he'll be safe.
Setting up for the pitch, Gus Kernut swings and hits it. The shortstop fails at diving to it. The left fielder misses it too. Maloney and Carlos Redamoza both get home after the triple with 2 RBIs. After a big 4th inning, the Colts hold that lead and go on to win the game 18-0.
Now let's take a look at the rankings. In 1A baseball, not every team has had a chance to play yet, so there's only 4 teams up there. But right now, Floyd leads the pack with a record of 2-1, followed by Logan, Cimarron, and Melrose.
In 2A, McCurdy is holding down that top spot, followed closely by Santa Rosa, Capitan, Loving, and Lordsburg.
In 3A, number 1 and 2 are West Las Vegas and Robertson, followed by Dexter, NMMI, and Socorro.
In 4A, Artesia at number 1 at 7-2, Kirtland Central at 3, also at 7-2, and Goddard at 5 at 8-3.
And finally in 5A, Cleveland leads everybody with a record of 12-1, followed by Rio Rancho at 12-2, and right behind them are Volcano Vista, Piedra Vista, and Centennial. Thanks for watching High School Spotlight.
Before we send you back to Doc, make sure you like us on Facebook, follow us on Instagram and Twitter, and subscribe to our YouTube channel for more photos, highlights, and updates.
Once again, I'm Ryan Schroeder,
And I'm Brandon Warren.
and we'll see you next week.
Welcome back to Sportslook. Thanks to Brandon and Ryan for that high school spotlight. And now we bring back to the set the pride of Artesia, New Mexico, assistant Greyhound baseball coach Deven Nelson. Coach, welcome back to Sportslook.
Thanks for having me. Good to be here.
Coach, a lot of baseball has taken place since the last time we had you on. If you had to identify one theme that's been the constant, what has that theme been?
It's definitely been ups and downs, highs and lows. I mean, we kind of expected that coming in, having a pretty young team coming in. You know, the guys that are upperclassmen that are playing haven't had a solidified spot up until this point, and we kind of expected the highs and lows to come, and we're, kind of taking them running right now.
Yeah, looking at the games that I've seen you play, and unfortunately I've just been a spectator this year because we haven't actually had a chance to start broadcasting your games on the radio. The couple of guys I recognize, like Paul Tapia, Malcolm Smith, but there are a lot of new guys out there.
Yes, sir, there are. We, kind of rough to have it happen early, but we kind of, had a little injury bug going around, and we're kind of playing some guys in spots that we didn't necessarily think that we would be playing them this early in, but, we've been giving them reps and they're catching traction, and, some of them are starting to pick up and take off here soon, so looking forward to getting going in conference here.
And I was just going to say, it's an interesting way that the Greyhound baseball season breaks down. You've got some games that are clearly non-conference. You've got some games starting with weekend series against WT here before long that are clearly conference. And then you've got some conference teams that you play that aren't conference.
Yes, it's kind of confusing. We like the way they kind of set that up, though. Give us, like I said last time, give us kind of a look and kind of see where we are early on against the better conference teams that we played, like a Tarleton State and a University, Kingsville.
I just happen to think, and this may be made a decision way above your pay grade, but Lone Star Conference is going to be expanding next year, and I can think of at least a few schools that I know that play baseball. The way that the season shapes up next year could be vastly different than this year.
Yes, sir. It's looking like it will be. When that does happen, conference will actually start the second week of the year, so you'll have 1 week to play whatever teams you want to do that first week, and then the second week it's go time. It's the nitty-gritty.
I thought when I looked at the schools that were coming into the conference that most of them were baseball schools.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir, it is. I think altogether there's probably going to be 18 teams.
Are they going to divide it into like a West and an East, or is it just going to be one 18-team Lone Star Conference, or is that to be determined?
I think it's to be determined. Obviously, us being the only New Mexico school in the conference, we'd like them to probably, hopefully, try to split it up some certain way just for travel purposes and everything else like that, but that's to be determined. We'll see how they decide to do everything when it's all said and over.
And there are two obvious ways that you can look at that. One way is to say, well, geez, you're going to have to do a lot of traveling. But on the other hand, you're the end of the line. This is as far as teams are going to travel. So that would definitely, I think, give you a home field advantage.
Absolutely, absolutely. Especially teams, the teams that are coming in who have never played here or played in the atmosphere of the plains that we're in here in eastern New Mexico. The wind, the weather, everything. It'll be a pretty good home field advantage that we'll have.
The last, now we'll go back to the here and now. So we did our theoretical look into the future, which could all change tomorrow.
Right.
So let's go back to the here and now. Last time I talked to you, we were talking about the pitching staff, who you thought would probably be your rotation. And we had one guy from last year that we thought, yeah, okay, since he was the guy that got you the win in the Lone Star Conference postseason tournament. Probably a pretty good guy to have back in the rotation. Was your guess, has it proven out, or have there been even some new guys that have worked their way into the rotation?
It stayed pretty much the same. It stayed the same right now. We're kind of flip-flopping guys in the games as starters, but the 4 starters have stayed pretty much the same. We're just starting them in different games, maybe once in a while just depending on rest, and we've had a couple midweek games. So that's kind of thrown a hamper in kind of what we're trying to do. So we're just moving guys around, just making sure they get enough rest. But 4 starters have stayed mainly the same.
And in terms of the starters, in what ways are they the same? In what ways are these 4 different guys that are coming out to pitch for you?
The guys we've been throwing in the 2 7-inning games, so Enrique and Joel Torres, they're pretty similar. You know, they mid to upper 80s. You know, they work down in the zone, have, you know, good control of their secondary pitches. And then the 2 9-inning game guys are a lot more taller guys, you know, a lot more downhill action that we get there. And they're pretty much the same, just downhill, kind of go at you, get them.
And obviously, in a 9-inning game, it may seem like it's 7-inning versus 9. No, there's a huge difference between coaching a 9-inning game and a 7-inning game.
Yes, sir, a huge difference. Those 2 extra innings don't seem like much, but when you get down to it, you know, those two extra innings mean a lot, and they matter a lot, especially when it's coming down to the end of the game.
And in the beginning of the game, I think of like in a 9-inning game, you got runners on first and third, 1 out. You usually play the infield back, you know, and
Yes.
you try and play for the double play. In a 7-inning game, you got to bring the infield up. You got to try and choke that run at the plate.
Yes, sir. You got to every inning you're trying to score, and especially in a shortened game, every run you can get matters, and it matters in every game. You know, if you're able to get a run an inning, you're going to be, you know, pretty successful. But especially in the shortened game, the 7-inning games, as many runs as you can put on the board, you need to take advantage and try to get that.
When I was, and this shows how long ago I played baseball, but you know, back in the day when I played in the 1960s, batting average, that was what you looked at. And then a statistic called on-base percentage
Yes.
crept in. Between you and Coach Gomez, is there a difference, or would you rather have an OPB guy or a batting average guy?
Oh, man.
That's a tough
That's
question.
yes. I guess it just depends on where you're hitting in the lineup. I mean, obviously, with like, you know, there's free bases. We like guys to take the walks and the hit by pitches, which is kind of what we've been emphasizing this year. We need runners on. We need people on. We need to create pressure. So, you know, don't get out of the way of a hit by pitch. Take that. You know, take the walks that they're giving us, but be ready to hit. You know, average does mean a lot. If you're ready to step in the box and hit, then you're going to be okay. Your average is going to be where it needs to be as long as you're sticking to the approach we're teaching. You'll be all right.
Of course, last year, a big reason why you were successful was you had a lot of guys in the lineup that could go yard, as the expression goes. How's the power production been?
It picked up a little bit this last week. I think up until this last weekend, I think we only had 3 home runs as a team, and I think we doubled that this weekend. So we had some guys there kind of starting to buy into the approach and going to get big in the hitters counts like we've been talking about. We look forward probably in conference here, trying to go out and get some more starting this weekend.
Yeah, and of course, we talked about the fact that you have seen some one-star conference teams, and now the games are going to count for real, as young people would say. Who in the conference has been kind of what you expected? Who's been the surprise conference team so far?
I don't know necessarily as a surprise, but WT's been playing exceptionally well. This last weekend they had a down weekend going down to Kingsville and playing, which is a tough environment to go into anyways, but their WT's really good, which we expected them to be. Angelo is a lot better than they were last year. So far this year, we're expecting big things from them when they come in here. We need to be ready to play, be ready to go, because they're going to be firing on all cylinders coming in, trying to, you know, prove us wrong from last year in the playoffs. They got a chip on their shoulder. Need to be ready to play them. Cameron was a big surprise this last weekend. They went down to Tarleton and took care of business and did what they need to do, and that's probably the biggest surprise for us right now.
I was going to say, just from an outsider's perspective, looking at the standing, that's the team that I'm really most surprised with.
Oh, yes, sir, definitely. And, I mean, it just goes to show that, especially in this conference, the talent's all around. Every team in this conference, any weekend, you could get beat by anybody. It doesn't matter. You just got to come ready to play because everybody has athletes. Everybody has good baseball players. You've got to stay locked in for every inning of every game, or especially in the game of baseball. In this conference, anything can happen.
Legendary former baseball coach Phil Claybaugh used to say that with evenly matched teams, it usually came down to who could catch and throw. And how's your defense been this year?
The defense has been the shaky part. That's kind of what we were going in. We thought that would be our strong suit, but we've been struggling a little bit. But we're starting to turn a corner here. I think the last couple of weeks we've been doing some stuff different in practice, trying to just shore up the defense because if we can pitch it okay, we're going to hit it okay. We just need to lock up the fielding, and we'll be okay.
Of course, we mentioned our bitter arch rivals, West Texas A&M, and they are coming to town not this weekend, but the next weekend, a 4-game series. And if I remember correctly, it's a 9-inning game at 7 o'clock on Friday, 2 7-inning games starting at 1 o'clock on Saturday, and then a 9 starting at 1 o'clock on Sunday.
Yes, sir, that's correct.
Obviously way off in the future, but pitching rotation going to stay the same for that one?
I would assume so as of right now, yes.
If there's one thing that you hope you guys do well against WT, what's the one thing you guys have to do to be successful?
We're going to have to hit. They're going to be able to swing it, and their rotation is pretty outstanding. They have a lot of guys, a lot of D1 kickbacks that know what they're doing on the mound. Their coaches at WT, get them right. They have a plan. They come in and they execute. And like we talked about last time, the velo, they got some guys who can throw it. If we're on time with the fastball and we're ready to hit, we're going to be okay.
Well, Coach, congratulations on the success so far, and best of luck moving forward.
Thank you, I appreciate it.
All right, well, that is going to wrap up the interview segment of Sportslook. So what we'll do is we'll clear the set, and I'll finish up with an overtime right now. For all of you who have ever played sports, you know that it's easy to keep playing hard in a close game if your team is losing. How about when your team's getting blown out? How many of us just kind of mentally checked out when we saw the score go to a 30-point deficit? Well, I can tell you one person who did play hard. That was earlier this week, Devin Booker, who plays for the Phoenix Suns. His team got demolished in a basketball game, lost by 33 points, 125-92, and he scored 59 points. That is an all-time record. No one has ever scored more in a losing cause when his team was getting beat by 30 points. And here's something else to think about. 92 points, he scored 59. That's 33 points that everybody else from the Phoenix Suns scored. So Devin Booker probably went to bed that night, went right to sleep. 11 guys for the Phoenix Suns that combined for 33 points. I hope they had a subscription to Ambien. Well, that has been an overtime, and that has been an episode of Sportslook. So I would like to thank my guests, Albert Flinn and Deven Nelson. I'd like to thank Brandon Ryan for the high school spotlight. I had actually 2 floor directors. I had Dijon and I had Aislinn. So for those aforementioned people, this is Doc Elder saying, so long.
Now, this is the story all about him. Welcome back to High School Spotlight. I'm Brooklyn Beal.
And I'm Dylan Knox.
Last week we traveled.
Well, it is going to... No, that's not.